Everybody, welcome back to the episode of RevTalks. Today, we're joined with Erika over at Transformatic. How's it going today, Erika?
Doing well, Patrick. Thank you.
Really appreciate you being here on RevTalks, taking some time out of your day to be here. Can you give us a little high-level overview about Transformatic, what kind of space you guys are operating in, and what you guys are doing as a whole, too?
Sure. Well, Transformatic is a transformational change management company that moves hierarchical organizations to self-managing organizations. That's the crux of it. There's an arc of going through leadership coaching to adaptive teaming to organizational transformation as a whole. So we have a book that guides people through this arc of transformation, and we've got some software to support the operational side of it because this really comes down to organizational operating systems.
So, and what does it kind of take for a company to be very hierarchical, like you mentioned before, but then want to actually consolidate? What are they typically at in terms of like lifespan? What does it look like? I'm sure there's a lot of changes with the decision makers within the company to kind of transition into more of a, different kind of operation. Kind of talk about that briefly.
Sure. Well, I mean, hierarchical organizations are the conventional way of organizing business. It's, top down organizations where you've got leaders leading leaders, leading leaders, leading people doing the work. And most of the decisions are concentrated in those leadership layers. The problem with that is that decisions take a long time sometimes. Voices that are actually closer to the work are not being listened to. And there's a recognition that moving toward more decentralized decision-making structures really provides better outcomes as a business. The challenge for hierarchical organizations is really concentrated in the leadership layers because leaders are fearful of giving up their power, for instance. They think that going to self-management is going to create chaos. It's going to take their job away. It's going to basically unleash a whole bunch of lack of control over things, when actually it's the opposite. What we're finding in the world really is that according to Gallup, which does a global workplace report every year, the staff engagement at work has been declining year after year and is over 70 disengagement. This is an indicator that people just don't like being at work. And part of that is because of these hierarchical structures and the way that leadership is imposed on people. So moving toward self-management does take a bit of a mindset shift for leadership, but the benefits are really huge. According to studies, people who get to make more of their own decisions. They have a deeper sense of purpose, for instance. They have a better shared purpose with their colleagues. They're generally happier at work. They get better outcomes. The profit comes in really much higher amounts potentially than using these more extractive structures of hierarchy.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people have kind of a bad taste in their mouth with sort of even kind of joining in the corporate world, especially when it comes down to people maybe be, like you said, top-down leadership, that kind of leaves a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And how do you think that directly attributes to people maybe having a more of a startup influx, especially in larger cities like here in Austin, Texas, too, where a lot of people are maybe trying to go down their own route and not really build companies as you mentioned before, conventional way?
Yeah, I think startups naturally operate this way anyway, so it is definitely a draw. I think that especially for people who've had that taste of corporate life, and not that all corporations are bad, by the way. I mean, there are some that really lean into transformational leadership and can be very supportive of people. So I don't want to throw all corporations under the bus, but I also do feel like people get conditioned in certain ways to expect, this is how I grow my career. I have to climb a ladder. I have to become a manager. So going to the startup world is one way of kind of taking control of your own destiny. And I think that my experience in startups has always been people wear a lot of hats. You're kind of naturally a flat organization. People just kind of do what they have to do. They may not be as organized as any kind of other conventional organization. It just may be, there's a lot of uncertainty in front of you and you're having to make decisions fast. And people don't really think so much about my title is the CEO, my title is the COO. They're just more like, we have these opportunities, let's jump on them, let's get them done, let's get these outcomes that we want. The thing with startups, though, is that there comes a point where if your startup is succeeding and you're growing and you're being successful and you're finding customers, you're getting investors, there's a point where you need to make a decision about how you're going to grow and how you're going to actually harden your organizational structure. That's the point where Transformatic tries to catch startup organizations, because the impetus is to say, well, who's going to be the COO? Who's going to be the CFO? Let's start putting titles and layers into the organization so that we can start, controlling this, the trajectory of this company. But they could just as well say, let's set up some roles for going into the future. Let's distribute our decision making across these roles. Let's distribute accountability across these roles and put some processes in place to ensure that we're all in sync with each other. Let's just continue to share our power in this way and ensure that we have a sense of purpose that we're all striving for. It's a different way of looking at it, but that's the point at which I think people start to recognize the power that these conventional hierarchical structures have over business, because it's the natural direction that people go. It feels more easy and comfortable, and everybody else is doing it. So, moving towards self-management feels like it's going against the grain. But, if you're trying to break away from corporate structure, I think that having that mindset of recognizing those kind of moments where it's like, I have to make a decision that's either going to concentrate power or it's going to distribute power, that gives you power, to the ability to choose a different direction. And, I'm also a big fan of experimentation. So, safe to fail experiments are one of the tools that we use to try new directions out in different ways. And so I think startups are very well equipped to do these kinds of safe to fail experiments.
Absolutely.
That's fail fast is one of the lean startup mantras, right?
Absolutely. And at what point in time would you say a typical startup or business would actually approach you? What does the kind of life cycle look like when they approach? They say, "Hey, what's the most common thing you're hearing?" Like, "Hey, Erica, we're typically dealing with X, Y, Z." And you're like, "Okay, perfect. We can jump in here and see what we can do." At what point in stage is the business kind of at?
I think it's the point where, your team is starting to scale. You're maybe breaking into multiple teams that are running parallel projects. You're starting to have to coordinate people across multiple projects. You're starting to feel like you need middle managers to come in and manage multiple people. As soon as an organization feels this need to have management in there, that's exactly the moment where this decision can be made to go a different direction. Just say, people have the capacity to manage themselves if you organize them properly. So it's really at that point of scaling beyond just probably one project team.
Absolutely. And as of right now, how are you guys currently acquiring new clients or customers? Is that mainly word of mouth and networking?
It is only word of mouth and networking. Yeah. And to be honest, in the United States, it's very hard to find clients for this kind of a transformation, because there is such a deep conditioning for hierarchical organization. But the circles that I find clients through usually are through agile circles. So I'm deeply trained in Agile all the way up to Agile coach. And Agile is one of these paradigms. People sometimes look at it as a project management tool, but it's way more than that. It really is kind of a paradigm which, first of all, encourages self-organization. It also encourages continuous learning. It encourages collaboration. And the people who really embrace Agile inside organizations are the ones who are more inclined to accept kind of a new direction, or at least experiment with a new direction. So those are the kinds of circles that I usually find clients in.
Absolutely. And as of current initiatives right now, what's kind of a main focus for the company? What's kind of something you guys are really actively looking towards working on, or a project or something specific you guys are really kind of looking towards now in the future?
Well, there's a couple of things. AI, of course, is one of I would say probably one of the biggest talking points that everyone loves to bring into conversation. And we are finding that among people, like, how are you dealing with AI? How are you incorporating this into your consulting? So we've been looking a lot about making AI part of our transformation process, not from the perspective of how do we apply it, but more from the perspective of how do we talk about AI as something to support people in the workplace. So that's something that we're incorporating into our consulting paths. We do individual team workshops too. So it's not just all about taking a leader and leading them all the way through a full organizational transformation. I mean, these things take a long time. So we're trying to break these up into bite-sized consultations and workshops. So we haven't released all of our workshops yet on the website. We do have an adaptive teaming workshop. And these are all meant to be kind of stepping stones to try self-organizing principles. So any opportunity that we have to even spend a few days with a team to get them to try something new is something that we would like to do. Not all consultations are very long engagements. Sometimes a team just wants us to come in and facilitate a goal setting session with a twist. Just how do we set goals so that we distribute decision making more evenly across the team rather than concentrating it in managers. There are a bunch of exercises that we're experimenting with. Let me put it that way.
Absolutely. And can you kind of briefly touch on that too? Is it kind of an audit or strategy up front that you guys typically lead with? I know you did mention kind of some of the team meetings. How does it typically go that, company approaches you or you approach the company and say, hey, look, let's look into XYZ. And from then, are you like, hey, let's audit the kind of team process, or what's kind of the process for all of that?
Yeah, well, everything always starts with some discovery conversations. So we always try to meet a team where they're at, which means we need to understand where they're at, but it's a pretty quick process. I mean, I've been in technology teams for over a couple of decades. I can recognize a lot of the patterns that teams have. Oftentimes, I would say most often teams are at a place where they're frustrated with the either siloing or rapid growth of an organization or lack of talent on a team. Those are probably the three biggest factors that I bump into very quickly with teams. And all of these things can be addressed by shifting techniques toward self-organizing and self-managing. So those are the kinds of conversations that I would have up front, just looking for those kinds of patterns. Often it's between maybe one hour conversation or maybe up to 3 1-hour conversations to get to that point. And then I would design a facilitation plan to come in and deliver a workshop for a team, or I would start to design a phased transformation plan for an organization that wants to go further than just changing a team.
Absolutely. That like makes a lot of sense. And then once again, where can we actually find you on the internet? What is the company website? And then what is your link go to for the audience?
Sure. So the website is transformatic.com. That's TRANSFORMETIC.com. Sometimes people think it's like transformatic, like medic, give me a medic, but it's metic.com. And my LinkedIn is, you can find me just at Erika Bjune. I'm probably one of maybe 2 Erika Bunes in the world who show up in internet searches. So that's my profile up there. And yeah, you can find my services, my book, and my software, Coactos, at coactos.com, which is the collaborative activity operating system that operationalizes pretty much everything that we facilitate. So all of my LinkedIn.
Super cool. So cool. Well, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to be here today, Erica. And I hope you have a great rest of your day as well.
Well, thank you, Patrick. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm glad, hope your audience finds some value in what I'm